So let's now move on to questions for the panel. So the pandemic accelerated the adoption of remote work and put Latin America in a very unique place. So question for Sue maybe, how has Latin America benefited from the adoption of remote work?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Diego, for the amazing introduction. When we think about the opportunities before and after the pandemic, we talked about this before, and it's amazing to see that the best talent now can really get to the best opportunities, no matter where they are. I think before the pandemic, all the people that wanted to have some impact within their own community, they have to go elsewhere to look for the best opportunities, learn, really become someone or gain more experience in a senior level, and then give back to the community afterwards. I think now that we have no geographical barriers, I think all the best talents could go out there and look for the best opportunities and stay within their own community. So I think having the role models very close to your own community really makes something sparkles there, like having the best examples, knowing someone that is working for an international tech company in an amazing product and really can bring that back and start his or her own company within the same community. I think it's amazing. So now the opportunity is out there and we don't have the geographical barriers anymore. That's on the talent side. And I think on the company side, we have also, like within Americas, the same time zone. So people are understanding that the good talent can be anywhere in the world. So if you have the tools to reach them, they will really surprise you. I think that was one of the most important things that we noticed from both of the sides after the pandemic.
Yeah, so definitely. Oh, I have to use this. So definitely a big opportunity for Latin America, given the geographical place that we have here. So, Madhu, what do you think is going to be the long-term impact of this transition to working remotely?
As we were discussing it, first of all, thank you for having me and for interest in joining, and it's a pleasure to be here. The long-term impact of this is, we were talking at breakfast before this. Before the pandemic, knowledge was global because of the internet. But because of remote work, opportunities have become global, which fundamentally changes that. And when we look at technology, for a long time, Silicon Valley progressed as much because it was the magnet for the world's best technology talent to come. Now, Silicon Valley is in itself a virtual thing. So on online, we connect. Like GitHub is the Silicon Valley of today. Like that's where most of the developers are hanging out. What happening in data, in fintech, in Web3, all of those ecosystems, it doesn't take 2 years, 3 years to come to Latam or India or China or anywhere else. It's happening at an instant, and you're at the cusp of that knowledge. So with that knowledge, opportunities are now to get distributed. So in this sort of backdrop at a global scale, Latam is at the center of all of this. Globally, if you look at it, we are entering into a period where what happened in the 80s, in the second sort of late stage of industrial development, that's happening in technology now. The 20s is going to do that. And I think there is a realignment globally between East-West, which is what sort of happened in the last 20, 30 years, to North-South. And Latam is at the center of it because of the time zone, but more importantly is the population, 600 million population, like same per capita income as China. But on top of that is the technology talent. We are now in the third iteration of talent from Globant type of services ecosystem, then the product companies such as Nubank, such as Rappi, such as other ones. And then now it's product-led global companies coming from here. So with the advancement of technology compounding, with the advancement of geopolitical advantage towards Latin America, and the talent being ready to sort of capture that opportunity, this is the right time to build for the world, and the world is your oyster. And the gateway to the world starts with the US, because that's where you have it's a world's largest economy by a large margin. It's open, and the best ideas win and the best product wins, not just funding. So once you crack that, that's your entry point to go to the rest of the world. And that's why I decided to start Modak in Latam than in India itself. The same time zone enables us to ship much faster.
So it sounds like we are, I've been hearing this word globalization all my life, right? I was born in '79. That's where globalization started, maybe in the 80s and 90s. But it sounds like we're finally entering this globalization of talent, right?
Yes.
Where, wherever you are as a company, you can hire wherever you want, and you have access to this global talent pool. So, Diego, one question for you. How is that globalization affecting local companies, and how can these regional companies compete for the same talent?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me and sharing with these great people. Last week we were sharing with Sue in New York City in a venture capital event, and we are seeing more and more collaboration, and I'm very grateful to be here. I think that you're talking about competition for talent, but also I see that it's a great opportunity not only to build things or to be part of important things from the capital cities of the countries of Latam, but also from all over the place. I was telling you a story in breakfast that when I started building companies when I was 20, in my 20s in Santiago del Estero, everyone was saying, "You're crazy. We don't start startups. We don't do that. Are you crazy?" And then I said, "No, but I'm not going to start from Santiago. I'm going to start from Argentina. My market is going to be Argentina." And then 2 years later, I realized that the market should be Latam. And they said, "Your dad is a psychiatrist. I guess that you should talk to him." And I did right and I did wrong, but I learned a lot. And what I'm seeing now in terms of talent is that you have to be inspired. You have to have a strong culture. You have to be connected with the leaders that you have. So in terms of competition, I guess that being a local company, all those elements are very important in order to keep your team engaged and even having growth opportunities among the company. Sharing equity is one element, another element. But I guess that building strong teams and strong cultures is a way to compete in the world. Now I see that a lot of companies are moving to the countryside. So I see, Globant building an office in Jujuy, which 5 years ago was almost impossible to think about that project. And so universities had a lot to do with it. Entrepreneurs have a lot to do with it. Government have a lot to do with it as well. And I'm very positive about how this is moving and having Latin America as boosting a lot of talent to the world, not only for the region.
I think that's a good, interesting approach. So I wanted to ask the same question to Sue. Actually, how are your portfolio companies competing in the talent market?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. I think when we see the logos on the slide from people that eventually had previous experience, like how you prevent yourself to be on the logo of the other companies that are tackling your own talent. I think building a strong culture, like Diego mentioned, like sharing the opportunities to really build together with the person. I think having the access to the best type of challenge, either in technology. Like if we think about 5 years ago, there weren't a lot of billion-dollar companies that really offered this type of challenge to the community that was developing software or products before. I think now we have amazing communities within Latam that offer the same type of challenge, that are tackling global markets. So I think the challenge locally is becoming larger, the opportunity is higher for sure, but I think culture, really understanding the purpose and missionary generational companies, I think are there to be built. I think people that are looking for a purpose to work on is definitely something that is more interesting for them when competing to global challenge, for example. One to mention, we have a company in Brazil called
I'm sure you as VCs, you have a huge role there.
It's a way to align interests, right? If you have the same goals, that not necessarily happen all the time. Not only founders against teams, but among teams. So there is the concept of confianza and trust. How you build that in order to execute it very strong, to be a different company than the rest, so outcompete the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sue, you're mentioning something that I hear a lot when we do connect talent from Latin America with companies in the US. Sometimes they come to us asking for people with experience in product, right? And you mentioned the case of the CPO. So I think that's kind of the missing link, right? Like once Latin America, and we're starting to see that, once Latin America starts developing product locally and you start building that expertise with people imported from the US, from Google, or from people developed here, maybe that CPO is now developing new people, and we'll start to see more product being developed, and that's kind of what needs to happen so that we move from just developing software to developing great products. Okay, so now everything sounds amazing, but the reality is a little different right now, right? So NASDAQ is down 29% this year. Large tech companies are down 30, 60%. There's a recession coming or maybe happening already in the US. Some companies in the US are asking people to go back to the office, so this idea of remote, we'll see what happens. The employment market in the US remains strong, but who knows what's going to come out in November. So how do you think this crisis is going to affect companies in Latin America? Maybe that's a good question for you.
Okay, I can start, and my colleagues here can complement this one. I think when we think about the next 5 to 10 years of tech, I think it's inevitable that it will grow, and regardless of the economic scenario. When you think about the Latam case, I think Latam, we are always experimenting a crisis or a downturn, and thank God, tech has not been within their cycles. So when we look at all the fundamentals that we have been building, so a lot of companies raised capital within the last 2 years, and then we think as in the bull market, I was telling that, Madhu was telling that to me actually, when in the bull market you raise and on the bear market you build. So lucky enough, a lot of companies had a strong war chest to go through the crisis within 12 to 18 months. Nobody knows how long it will last, but definitely tech will outgrow, I think, the crisis. And good companies are really built in downturns. So if you think about access to capital, it was cheaper, so it was an option. But amazing companies, they can be built without raising a lot of capital. So we were talking about Calendly, for example. Calendly is it's a solution that you can fill in your slots and then you can book meetings very easily. They just raised 500K in US dollars, and they got to 70 million in ARR, annual recurring revenue. So raising capital should be an optionality for this market and not an obligation, for example. Of course, a few companies were made within the last 5 years thinking a lot of the growth mindset, pushing products to the market. Now, we really need to think about the right type of product market fit, product-led growth companies that will eventually grow within sales after they really figured out what's a good and viable path to raise or to grow their product. So I think amazing companies will be built. Latin America has fortunate or unfortunate, a lot of infrastructural challenges. And when we look at not only China and India, we have similar kind of challenges than the US. The US have a lot of infrastructure. We have to build everything from zero. So I think that really creates an amazing opportunity that is just starting up. So Latin America is definitely on the map, as we used to say, but we are on the first 3 minutes of the game. There's a lot to come. And when you think about the comparisons to China back then, it's very similar what has happened there and what's happening here, in spite of the economic downturn. So.
Thank you for that. And it sounds like maybe for the first time, we think about it. We know about inflation more than anyone else out there, right? So with all of this inflation, we should be in a pretty resilient position.
But we are
to
the
succeed.
experts.
we are the experts. So we just need to use this opportunity in our favor. So, Sue, you mentioned China, and that's a great segue for me to ask Madhu this question. So you have experience investing in China and investing in India. I talked earlier about the unicorns and TikTok. So how did China and India go from building for their local market to building for the world? I mean, how do you explain what happened there, and what can we learn from their experience?
Yeah. The way that you think about it, I think I read this somewhere, which was very interesting. The first wave of technology has been a lot more about fixing information. It's much more news websites, gaming websites, email in companies, like even old companies, just how do you talk with each other. So getting basic efficiencies. So that's what happened, and that's where you see a lot of services companies, you see a lot of IT services type of companies that come in. And the first wave of product managers are also basically delivery managers. And there are sometimes you serve the US market in that era, and you served as a back office or as a services one. And that's what sort of China did, and that's what India did, much more than China because of the language in English. And that's what sort of Latam also has several IT services companies. The second wave has been, how do you generate revenues online? It's not just information, it's not just advertising. How do you generate revenues? And mobile has actually expanded it a lot more because of the penetration of mobile device. Everybody has access to an internet access, and the digital payments have sort of come in Latam in the last 10 years as well. So each of these markets, when you had digital payment and when you had a mobile device, that created an opportunity to create revenue. So that's what opened up the window for companies like Nubank, for Rappi, for 99, for several other companies that we hear about. That sort of came in. And that same journey has happened in China 10 years ago, India 5 years ago, Latam currently. The third wave is where, how do you get to the next generation of technology wave, and how does that sort of get to be digital native? And that's sort of the Web3 era that we are entering right now. And the waves got compressed in the rest of the world because once the sort of US led, then China and India sort of caught up, and those cycles became shorter. And now Latam has sort of played catch up in COVID. COVID became an accelerant and moved it much faster with globalization and stuff. Now when you look at it, the next decade, the era is around what are the biggest technology waves? And that sort of touches on the concept that you heard about earlier as well. Recessions or downturns are the catalyzer for people to try a new technology. Nobody thought that we would share a cab with a random stranger or stay at somebody else's house. That happened because of the recession and people were cost conscious. So you had the technology, which was mobile, internet, and all of that happened at the same time, coupled with people's behavior change to say, let me try, because it's cheaper. And that sort of happened, and the regulation sort of kicked in. All three happened and created a new industry and a new era that we ran on for 10 years now. But now that sort of boom has shifted, and there's no capital. So in the last 2-3 years, we got a little bit lazy, say, let's just hire 1,000 salespeople and not 1,000 engineers. Like Nubank is an iconic company because there are 5,000 employees for this class. For this one, I was looking into it. 2,000 are customer support, which you need. 1,400, the biggest team is engineers. 1,400 are engineers. The growth, sales and marketing growth, that's only 500 people. Then the general management is around 1,000 people. So they took a thing and say, hey, let's not be lazy. Let's build technology and product-led growth, because that's what makes us solid. And that's why Nubank and Chime are the only two neobanks in the world that are profitable, that has sustained economics. So it's technology-led one. So it's taking us back to the fundamentals. As we get into this ecosystem, we're going back to fundamentals to say, how do you build technology and great products that can make an impact? And so now, if you look at Latam context, and I'll bring it back, if you look at a US, a unicorn company in a fintech, for example, has 30 engineers. And now with the ecosystem and APIs, you can have the same financial features. But technology building, here you can have 40 engineers quickly of the similar quality, almost the most ambitious ones. We work harder, because we were told you can't do it, which means we'll do it even better. So you can quickly, time that it took 6 years for somebody else, you can do this in 2 years. In a constrained market like this, the market leader can't be aggressive, but a fast follower can be more aggressive. And that's where Latam plays a huge advantage, both for the US companies coming here or the Latam companies going global, or companies like us who are intentionally designed to be Latam first. And we are here, all of our teams here, there's only one in the US. But the approach here is, okay, how do we be aggressive in this approach? Not aggressive in terms of marketing spend, aggressively build technology, world-class products, be in the front room, not in the back room, and then go for the market. So this is the kind of companies that comes in this market.
Yeah, so in this scenario of, oh, sorry, yeah. In this scenario of scarcity, right? We're back. We're not in 2021 anymore. Now that there's scarcity, but at the same time we have these role models, right? To look after. Like we can look at what happened in India and China, maybe some other markets. Diego, you have plenty of experience as an entrepreneur. So, what kind of mindset you need to leverage those factors and become successful? What are the traits that you need to have as an entrepreneur in order to take the next step and build something from Latin America to the world?
It's impossible not to talk about resilience. It's impossible not to talk about building teams, as we were mentioning before. It's impossible not to think now that we have opportunities globally, not just in Argentina or for Argentinians, but or Latam. This is global. Web3 that you were mentioning is a great opportunity, and also we see this disruption that has much better use of case in Latam than in the rest of the world. So this is an amazing opportunity. Mindset, you have to be positive. You have to have, especially you guys that are nerds, right? I suppose that I am. I work 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. I cannot step down from 70 hours a week.
You're a fairly cool nerd.
But the thing is, we need to be in front of the opportunity that the crisis is bringing to us. The crisis is global. I was talking to an investment banking in New York with 3 guys, actually. They invited me to the office, and they were telling me all these trends about how this ecosystem is not going to change for the next 3 years. And I was very comfortable sitting in my chair, and I was saying, okay, guys, let me tell you a story. I did a research since I was born in 1975. Yes, I'm a dinosaur. 47 years after, in Argentina, we live more years of crisis and recessions with GDPs below 0 than positive years. Is that possible for a country? So you have to develop a strong mindset. Not only yourself as a leader, but building leadership across the teams. And you guys were talking about a lot on the product side, which is very important. Now it's a huge opportunity for products. But in my case, that I never coded one line, but I built I co-founded 23 startups. I know that the market side is very important. So if you don't have a very strong distribution strategy, a go-to-market, a way to partner with potential competition or cooperations in other regions or in other type of products, your growth is going to be slow. You're not going to be competitive. And you're not going to have the potential that we have in Latin America now. Now, talking about from the other side, the dark side, the VC side, we are looking and searching for entrepreneurs and teams who really believe in that vision, and they truly believe that they can execute that, and they have a plan for that. So again, the way that you communicate, the way that you develop the soft skills, the mindset is not everything, but it's really very important, and it's actually what connects us and build trust.
Pretty solid. Very solid answer. So speaking about skills, Madhu, you're actually the first Indian that is building a team in Latin America that I know, at least. I don't know if you can think of any other one. So why Latin America, and what kind of skills and mindsets are you looking for?
Great question. I think a little bit of personal story, I think you touched on it. Like, I grew up in a village in India. Like, I'm the first in my family to graduate from high school. And I came from there all the way to here. And it's quite far, like 3 continents. Because everything went right for me. I'm so thankful because India got the economic development that made me say, okay, I should study, that made me get a scholarship, that made me go to the public university, that made me say, the world started paying attention to India and say, oh, Indian talent could be good. And by the time I became, I started showing up in career, Indians started becoming the CEOs of global companies. That again made me in the valley, it's not a disadvantage to be an Indian, it's actually an advantage. That people say, oh, we see Indian CEOs everywhere. Indian guy, fine, you can be successful. So I think everything went right for me. And everyone who believed that great talent can come from anywhere in the world, I was an example for it, and people took a chance on me. And I worked at GGV Capital, which manages $10 billion of assets. 10 billion, it's one of the topmost firms in the world. I got it because Hans Tung, who is one of the top 10 investors in the world on Forbes' list, he took a chance on me and say, okay, I believe that you can be good too, work for me. So if each level, if they don't take chance on me, I wouldn't be here. So my theory and personality is that if we go and give an opportunity to anywhere in the world where nobody is fishing and give a platform for somebody who's ambitious, who's going to give it all. They may not need to know everything else. And we're engineers, and I'm an aerospace engineer by education. I don't care about the intercept. I care about the slope of growth. As long as you have a slope of growth, I can use my network. Like, I put this panel in 2 weeks, right? Because we have the network and we trust each other. So we could do this. We can pair you with the mentors. We can get you the resources and stuff. And I can absorb the stress and say, let's go for the global. Let's play for the Olympics. Like, not just in our state and our country. And I want to be that magnet, Modak to be the magnet where we attract the world's best talent. And Latam is something where a lot of people, we were talking about it. Like, people said the same thing about India 5 years ago. It's like, oh, Indian startup is a fad. It's going to go away and stuff. 10 unicorns, we had like 3 of them die. And they did die. But we got 100 unicorns afterwards because people learned from their managers. People learned from their internet. People evolved, learned from mistakes, learned from others, learned from advisors, and moved on. So the way we're building Modak is like, Latam is at that edge where everybody else still underestimates. I believe in it because I've invested in Frubana, in several other companies here, and I've worked with the region, and we hired an analyst, like some of them in the room now. They're as good as anybody in the valley, if not better. I think that's what made me say, if I come before everybody else, and if we become the place where we create the best talent density in the region, even if they're with us only for 3 years and they go start their own companies, it's okay. I would rather get amazing talent, amazing work for 3 years rather than have an average person for 10 years. Let's build that, and let's create the company, go for the world, and by that time we're in advantages and the world is our oyster, then we can go to multiple countries, multiple regions. That's why we're building from here.
Some of the companies we work with, they say that hiring talent, technical talent in particular, in Latin America is their best kept secret.
Yeah.
So hopefully it stops being a secret and everybody talks about it and we have more business, right?
But few CEOs come and spend time. I'm taking an apartment here. I'm like 30% live here to actually close good candidates.
It takes a lot of energy and commitment. So Diego, you wanted to intervene?
I wanted to add something at the top of what you mentioned. And it's about not only technical talent, we need the other side as well. We need people that can sell the vision. And you guys need more than that people to complement your skills more than anyone else. So if you are starting something, not hire, engage the best talent in terms of go-to-market strategy, marketing, and especially pitching. Pitching, it's something that half you're born with that skill, and half you develop it. And I guess that the main difference in between US startups and Latin American startups are the mindset in terms of selling and pitching.
Big time.
When you start something from the US, you don't have a product, but you're pitching to anyone, even in TV. Here, you're shy, even though you are making, $10 million ARR. I found that very, very interesting and a complementation.
That's a shift I had to do as a group because as I evolved, I was an engineer. I was like, I love coding. Like even now, my team knows. Give me 3 hours that nobody disturbs me. I just want to read something and get up to speed.
Yeah, I guess culturally we don't like talking about ourselves, right? I think that's what it is.
And also the language. This is a very interesting fact. We train our startups. We have invested in 55 in the last 14 months. And we train our startups to pitch in English. And none of them are from the US or English-speaking countries. Mm-hmm. So they are out of their comfort zone and they start pitching in English. At the first time, they putean. but then they realize that for a VC perspective, some person that speaks better English is much more trustworthy than a person that has a better product. And it's not that I'm saying that, it's the feedback that I got from our LPs and other VCs.
Yeah, so I think, thank you. I mean, there's more coming, but I think it's time to go to Q&A. So if anyone from the audience has any questions. Do we have, there's, okay.
We cannot see you. There's a light over here.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Buenas. Voy a hacer la pregunta en español para no tener que pensarla tanto.
No hablamos español.
Bueno, para Diego principalmente, con el tema del engagement de la gente en el nuevo modelo donde hay un montón de empresas de afuera trabajando en Latinoamérica, es cada vez más común el tema de stock options, de ofrecer dentro de los beneficios stock options a la gente. ¿Cómo está impactando eso a las empresas que están también siendo startups en Latinoamérica, por un lado? Y por el otro lado, ¿cómo compatibilizan por ahí el tema de empresas que nacen como startups y que empiezan a tener un crecimiento? En Latinoamérica están creciendo con contractors y eventualmente necesitan, de cara a IPOs o salidas, digamos, un poquito más preparadas para las inversiones, necesitan cambiar un poco el modelo y cómo lo están adaptando, digamos, para tener talento local. Local me refiero de Latinoamérica en empresas que quizás son globales, ¿sí?
So I'm very old and I tend to forget about the questions. Let me. What was the first one?
That was a long question.
The first one was about aligning, right? Yeah. Stock options. We don't invest in companies that they don't have this type of structure. Because otherwise, you're going to be just a couple of founders pulling el carro solos, by yourselves. And that's impossible to compete globally just with 2 people or 3 people. So, you know, it's a way of saying in seed rounds, you kind of generate a structure of 10%, let's say, for not only for employees, but also for early advisors. And as you move on, and probably Sue, you can tell more about how to structure this, it's the same way. So at the same time, you're separating some part of your equity for investors. You have to have that in mind, that 10% of the equity for each round is going to go for new employees. And especially taking place that the teams and the people that co-founded the business probably are not going to be there and going to managers in Series B or C. You're going to need different talent on the way. That was and it's working very well, especially since with all the experience that is bringing, the contracts that is done work much better than 10 years ago. And it's more usual. Now, it's very important that you realize and you make the people realize the value of the stock options. Otherwise, it's just papers. There is a specific value. This paper that I'm giving to you is $50,000 now, but the idea and the value proposition for you is that this is going to be $5 million in 7 years. It's totally different pitch. Again, the pitch. And the other,
We budgeted like 11% of the company. Like it was, we looked at the averages and said above average, and let's commit publicly just for early employees when I started.
Another question?
Second question.
Sully.
You wanna?
Can I,
Yeah, go
if I can complement the question, I think there's one important part that is still missing, so all of us can realize really the value of liquidity, the value of the stock options is liquidity. So I think we already had a few first examples. For example, we invested in 99, which is a ride-hailing company from Brazil that was acquired by Didi from China for $1 billion. And within 99, we had a lot of examples, not only the founders, of people that really generated some value and realized those options. I think that's only the part that is missing still, how we can align those two incentives, like giving equity, but also having liquidity so people can realize that. And it's not only after the exit that you can realize. For example, within rounds, you can sell a little bit of secondary, you can align incentives with investors, so you can really retain your talent longer and take a little bit of the risk out of the table. So I think there's a lot of mechanisms that you can leverage to really keep people aligned with the right incentives. And you can also refresh the option pool, bring more people, understanding who is adding value to your company, and really build out of that.
And besides that, I will add the importance of the one-on-one meetings, the structure of this, what is your expectation? And what is the reality? Every, let's say, 3 months, have that hard conversation up front and bring it. What do you need? What are you trying to learn? Who are the people that you want to meet with? It's not about us. The question of leadership is, what do you need? How can I help you? How can I support you? So I guess that complements the money side, right?
Ok, buenos días, gracias por la charla. Bueno, mi pregunta básicamente es, dado que GitHub puede representar el nuevo Silicon Valley, ¿cuál podría ser la estrategia o el meme que una a todos estos teams para construir soluciones? Gracias.
No.
Do you mind repeating the question with the microphone closer to your mouth? Because it was really hard.
Okay. Sí, bueno, básicamente es, ¿cuál es esa pieza que una a los diferentes talentos que pueden ser encontrados en GitHub? ¿Sí? ¿Qué los identifica pues, para construir soluciones? Basado en su experiencia.
Algo así como cómo construís desde Silicon Valley un equipo en Latinoamérica y cuál es el hilo conductor para ese equipo. O sea, ¿te referís a si contratar leadership local y ese tipo de cosas?
Algo así.
Okay. You get it? Do you want to take that?
No.
I think I can go.
So
I understood the question. I got translation in English here. So yeah, GitHub is the Silicon Valley, is the new Silicon Valley, and you're asking how can you get the opportunities that Silicon Valley does if it's the new Silicon Valley, right? And how do you get that? So in Silicon Valley as well, if you look into it, it's not one place. It's San Francisco. It's a whole Bay Area, and there is all kinds of people. There are people who take advantage. There are people who do the nice things, and there are iconic companies that come. So the beauty of that is, it's not just you trying, but the people are open and give you an open hand and say, "Let me help you." And that mindset, incentives are aligned as well, because when people did that earlier, there's a random Uber driver who invested in some company earlier as an angel investor, and he became rich. So everybody has this incentive to help each other and give a hand. So now when you apply that to the remote world and say, yes, there's going to be a lot of companies that's going to come here and spend time. But the question is, how do you create the right environment and right incentives to be global? And that's where you got to have the right support, both for the founders. I was telling the joke earlier, when China or India wanted to sell to the US, they said, "Oh, you got to wear suits, or you got to go play golf or other stuff." No, none of that. So they tried a lot and you wasted a lot of time. But then people came in and said, "Okay, here's how you build and here's how you reach out." That's where sort of investors, mentors, advisors help. The second question as a talent is look for opportunities and companies where they don't look at you as a cheap resource. They don't look at you as a second-class citizen. They don't put you in an auxiliary service, a secondary service or something. They come for you because they believe in your potential. They believe in the talent. They believe that great talent can come from anywhere. And be in the same team, be in the same thing. It's not two different laptops. It's not the office team gets ThinkPad and you get something else. It's not two different privileges. It's not two different things. You're not writing some random code. You are in the main room. And the best product development happens when you're talking with engineers, giving context and building. So look for organizations and places that lets you do that. And the second thing is psychological safety. I think in remote world, it's a concept that I think us three have done different classes at Stanford, and there's a study they did across multiple teams, and they said the only indicator of high-performing teams versus others is psychological safety, is how can somebody give you comfort that you're safe? For example, I know I'm behind, I know this is safe, so I know psychologically I feel like safe. So in a job, how do you know that your job is safe? How do you know that your manager thinks that you're doing well? How do you know that they have your back when you try something? So organizations that create that succeed well than anybody else. That also means the leadership. For example, we're taking leadership and we said, each of our leadership team should be here till we have our own Argentinian leaders in the team. We should always be there. We're committed to it. And I walk through our financials every 2 months. Every 2 months, by the way, bring the whole team together. And I think when we become big, it'll be 3 months. And I basically walk through the financials of the company to say, here's how much budget we have, here's how much runway we have. So they're safe about the company. 2 is, here's your role. And we have another rule, which is like, you are never in doubt whether your job is safe. If you're not doing well, you will know that you're not doing well. Till then, don't have these fears that you're not doing well. It's lonely when you're remote and when you're working on your own. But knowing that, look, unless they tell you that you're in trouble, it's okay. Like little things, these are the things that we got to adjust ourselves to say, how do you give the best platform for amazing talent to work?
Another question here?
So, let me add one thing there. So I couldn't agree more with what Madhu was saying. I think ultimately it's about the second thing he mentioned about first class and second class citizens. So I've seen companies with various configurations, managers only in the US, managers in Latin America, managing the team here, individual contributors just being part of different teams in the US, individual contributors just forming a separate pod. So there are many different configurations. I don't think that one is better than the other. I think ultimately what really matters is that everyone, no matter where they are or where they come from, they're part of the same team, they're part of the same culture, and they're treated fairly as first-class citizens. So if you really want to have that experience of working for a company at the core team, like make sure you're treated fairly as anybody else, no matter where they are.
Yeah, ask the tough questions.
Here.
Hey, thanks. That was really interesting, and I totally agree that there's a lot of potential in Latam. But maybe what I would like to know a little bit more, or what would be interesting for people here to understand, is if you have a startup idea or if you want to found a company, how do you do this from here, from Argentina? Like, what are some concrete steps you can do?
Okay, I can take on that one. So if we're starting a company here from Latam, or eventually not from Silicon Valley, I would look for the best people that are trying to help amazing entrepreneurs since the very beginning. So we have amazing funds from entrepreneurs like Newtopia and many others, not only here in Argentina, but more globally. Like we as Monashees, we invest all over Latam, regardless where the teams are. So we made our first investment in Chile, I think it was a few last year. So definitely, we truly believe that talents can come from anywhere. So getting the right introductions for the people that you really want to meet and people that can help you. So we were talking about this, like pitch your idea. Don't be like building only by yourself, like exchange ideas, get feedback from other people that you really trust, that you can really know that will add some value to your idea. And if you really see a connection with that fund or with that person, this is really, really something very interesting to create psychological safety with your partners. So in the end of the day, we really believe that investors are your thoughtful partners, your extended co-founder that you can bring, ask the tough questions, they will help you. And it's not only about the money. So I think a few funds have that mindset. So look for the people that have the right mindset that you can really count on, that has previous experience doing that before. So I would pitch those funds, I will talk with the community, I will participate in the events, like be inside within the ecosystem, like events like this one, like exchange to your colleagues, like, hey, I'm building something like this, do you know any idea that could help me? Like Web3 has an amazing thing that really people help each other, like regardless where they're getting from, just to help and make the products better. I think you can really leverage that community, leverage those type of tools to learn faster and build your company faster and iterate faster. I think that's another thing that is really important, like learning from other people's mistakes. If you're only building stuff only by your own, you're never going to understand what worked and what has not worked.
I can also add that, are you listening? No? Okay, 1, 2, there. Also adding to what Sue was mentioning is that you have to realize that Argentina is not a market. Okay? So move as fast as you can out of here. But I don't mean the team, I mean the market. In order to generate revenues, you have to approach to Brazil, Mexico, even the US as fast as you can. When you have the first signs of product market fit, move out. Not all the team again. I guess that is a great opportunity to start something now from Argentina or from any other country in Latin America to build global projects. But once upon a time, you're going to need someone in the US building relationships, connecting with VCs. And start from the scratch, it takes a long time. So as Sue was saying, probably you need a partner somewhere else that has that experience that can complement your product mindset and skills. I think that is the key question. And start looking at the partners and say, who's going to Mexico? Not to eat tacos, but to stay there for a couple of years until, also to eat tacos. After 3 days, it's not good for your stomach. But for 2 years, that you can win the market, and then for the next step, those are the companies that are going to be funded from US VCs in Series A, Bs, and complementation with Latin American VCs that invest in them. So be smart. You have that idea 10 years, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, and you start from the scratch building that. Don't just meet with the one that is sitting by your side and say, hey, why don't we start something, the NFTs for politicians? I don't know. That could be an idea.
So in summary, working? Yeah, now it is.
I think one more question.
In summary, ask for help.
For support.
Ask for support and get out of Argentina in terms of the market, right? Like look for a market outside of Argentina.
One of the founders, at least.
One of the things I really like about technology, and this is obvious in Silicon Valley, and it's starting to happen here, or it's happening here, is that everyone is willing to tell you everything about what they're doing. There's no secret. There's like ideas, they have a little value here and there, but it's really about the execution and tweaking the product and the go-to-market strategy. So everyone is willing to share. So don't be shy. Don't be shy when sharing your ideas and trying to get feedback. I think it's super important then. So get advice. Get lots of advice.
Sometimes I meet with someone after a conference and say, hey, I have a question. Okay.
Sign an NDA.
I have this idea, but I don't know whether to tell you or not.
It's like sign an NDA,
that's
right?
That's not a right way to approach, right? Share. And transparency is also very important. You were mentioning that you share the financials. That is crucial. If we have all the information, we can make better decisions faster.
Yeah, people shouldn't be worried about, do I have a job in 6 months? Like, how much runway do we have? Like, in this market, everyone's worried. Just like, calm down. It's okay. We have 4 years plus. Don't worry.
One more question.
Okay. I'm going to try to speak in English because I want to avoid future puteadas. Let's go. You mentioned that you can have money, you can have a good product, but culture it's such an important thing to build something successful. Actually, I like that here we have 3 different perspectives, 2 from investor and 1 from a founder. As an investor, can you tell me one that is more typical for something that is not successful, that you see that fail? And for Madhu, tell me one that you are doing different from the other startups.
You guys should go first. No,
First.
Okay, so one thing that we really see that startups fail a lot is in founder relationship. I think that's the number one thing. Like, if you really don't find a person that eventually you will like to spend a lot of time with him or her for the next 5 to 7 years, you really know where your relationship can break. Like, make the tough questions, understand what is very important for the person. I think that's the number one thing that we see that startups can fail, is within founder relationship, not having the trust, not understanding what's more valuable for that person on the long term and on the medium term. And on a second point is what Diego said, is market. Like, sometimes you're too early, sometimes it's too late, sometimes you don't have a larger market size. So do your research, get your product out there, really understand if the market that you are pursuing is big enough for your own ambition. Like, sometimes it's amazing to build a company within a niche, and the company will grow just fine. You're going to be an amazing entrepreneur. You don't have to raise money from VC if you don't want to build a very large company. Like I mentioned, there is no right or wrong. There's several paths to build a company. Just choose the one that works for you. So I would say, like, really understand who's in there with you, if you share the same values, if you share the same dream, and then if the market is right for your own ambition, and then build a path to that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that this is a marathon, as you probably have heard of. It takes 10 years at least. Be patient, but be very consistent on what you're building. And I have a statistic regarding the failures. So 95% of the companies are going to fail, especially startups, right? 56% of them fail because of lack of connection with the market. It's not the product, it's not financials, it's not even dealing with partners, that I believe that is the most important thing. Is the lack of connection with the needs of the market and a wrong strategy to approach to it.
My thing is that it's so easy to see, what's a hot thing right now. Like, people change, like, okay, Web3 was hot, food delivery was hot, something or the other was hot, and it always goes in hot and cold cycles. So the toughest thing is, how do you move the team towards taking distractions out and thinking about the longer horizon? You're not a trader. Like, a trader trades on a daily basis. An investor invests on a 5-year horizon or at least plus horizon, good investors or VCs. A founder or a team is building for a 10, 15-year plus horizon. And 10, 15 plus years is not shaped by short-term things. It needs to be a deep thinking around where is the market going, where is the technology going, and where is the society going, and then build something towards that. So, and to do that effectively means not making shortcuts. When you have a good versus a great candidate, like, wait, even when you need it, wait, and then hire it. Like, we need a recruiter urgently, but we had so many candidates, but it took 3 weeks to say, let's make the right decision, because that person is the gatekeeper to get good candidates or even miss good candidates when they can't see it. So each and every one of those things, it may take an extra week, but the patience to do it. Which means, that brings to the last and quick point, is around how do you enable your team to make decisions and you become the custodian. As we start scaling it, the founder's job or the leadership's job is not to make decisions, is to enable everybody else and to be the custodian to make those tough decisions when they don't have the ability to do it, or the courage to say, do it, it's okay, I'll trust your support, and making them towards the hard decisions that's needed. And that culture building in the first year is really hard, but doing it and building the muscle in the organization sets the culture for everyone else for long term.
All right, so it's our time to wrap up. So I want to thank the panelists. You did a great job. Thanks to Jolo and Guido and the whole organization, and thanks to all of you for being here. And I think now it's time to go and build for the world from Latin America. So let's go.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much for being here.